Okay, in this video we're going to look at the KS evaform damper in detail, how it can be used to improve your ride on your VSETT 10. We'll also look at answering a few questions on why you would want to change your damper. I will also demonstrate in a how-to section of the video to install it on your VSETT 10. And finally, I'll give you some ride feedback on how it felt for me. Hey, it's Alan here from EMG, where I help you to improve your ride. The KS evaform damper is currently the recommended damper for the VSETT 10. You can get it in two variants. The variant I have is the dual chamber, and I'll explain what that means. Spring setup that's on the VSETT 10, and the dual A5rr1 damper that I have bought. But before we do, make sure you stick around to the end of the video. Whilst you may be considering the advantages of changing your damper, we have to look at the quality of the original VSETT coil spring, and you'll note there is no damper actually on the spring. It is just purely a spring. In this setup, the spring compresses and then releases its energy uncontrollably back into the front wheel. When that happens, you can get a loss of grip and you can get a loss of stability. You ideally want to be able to control the rate at which the spring returns, or in our form, how quickly the damper returns. So now that we've discussed the role of a gas shock over a spring setup, let's look at the evaform in more detail. First thing you'll notice, that to control the compression and rebound in this setup, you'll have two pressures. One's marked MP, and that is main pressure. Main pressure is the compression. The other one on the other side of the damper is MP. Now that is the negative pressure. So in that case, when it comes back down, that's the pressure it takes to release. So the higher that pressure is, the slower that can come back down. Now the length of the standard setup on the VSETT 10 is 125mm. You can get the KS evaform in 125mm long. It comes with a 15mm stroke. Now the stroke is important because that's how far the spring will compress from negative bottom to maximum top. So now that we've run through what it does and why you would want to change it, let's jump into the build.
First up, we need to remove the mudguard using the 3mm Allen key. Move the oil guard out of the way, but you'll notice the wire is still attached. Here you'll notice I'll be using some new washers. We clean down the old holes. And we've got to lay two rags over the deck. This is to protect the deck when we remove the wheel and place it on the deck. So here we go, we're going to take off the front disc brake caliper using the 5mm Allen key to remove the two holding bolts that hold it down. The reason we remove this is just to make sure we don't damage the disc. Once that's placed out of the way, remove the two screws and keep them somewhere safe. Now we pry the wire away from the wheel I've loosened these off already, but you'll need a little Phillips screwdriver just to remove that rear, and then you should be able to pull the whole cable out. Next up, we're going to get a 21mm socket, and we put it on the front hub, and we loosen the two nuts off, taking away the two holding pins that stop the wheel from falling out should the nuts come loose. Once we've got these out of the way, the front wheel is free and able to move. So a gentle tap and down it comes. And we take this and the mudguard and place them on the deck, just being careful because now we're shifted the weight of the scooter. Hold on to the scooter, put them on the deck. This is the importance of them two rags. I'm just tilting the scooter forward a bit just so the weight's more balanced on that stand. Now we've got to clean this up. Literally the mud gets absolutely everywhere inside here. Take your time with this bit because it's probably your only chance to get it cleaned. Now we need the 19mm socket. We put that on the back of the swing arms, undoing them. I've already loosened them up just to make the video quicker. Now those two are off, we need to gently tap the swing arm out of the way. You notice how I put a rag over it, that just protects the paint. Now that's the swing arm out of the way, and the pin that was going through the bottom of the spring. So now we're going to remove the top of the spring with two 4mm Allen keys. Loosen it up, and then you can tuck one up underneath the side and use that as your second hand while you unscrew one side completely. Then we tap through the pin, and then the spring is just held up by the Allen key there, and that's the spring away. So now here comes up the weigh-in time. The original spring comes in at 452 grams, that's a mighty nearly half a kilogram. This is going to blow your mind. 179 grams there. Unbelievable weight saving. So now the spring's out of the way, I'll quickly clean this up, and what I will point out down the back here is where the horn hole is in the bottom of the deck plate. That right there is the horn hole, and you can see how much rubbish gets flicked up at it. So I seal the line up with a bit of helicopter tape.
The shock.
We reinstalled the shock. I faced it so the A5 reads downwards, and the reason why I've done that in this particular installation is just so any dirt that's flicked up at the bottom of the shock gets pushed down and out of the way by the movement of the shock. Making sure the pin's all the way through. We've got the main pressure valve at the top there on this particular install, and then we've got the negative pressure. Now we're just putting the arms back on, give them a gentle tap, and they close up quite nicely. Then we get the 19mm M14 nuts, put them back on the back there, do both sides up. Now I haven't completely timed it up. Here's the little washer. We need to get the washer and then put in the two pins back in, top of the damper. This is the reverse of when we took it off. two 4mm Allen keys, tightens that back up. You need to get this fairly tight. Once you're happy you've got that tightened up enough, that's the damper installed. Everything's looking nice and clean, so we just tighten up the two 19s now. We'll just pop the ratchet on them, nip them up. And start the rebuild complete. Nice and tight. Now we reinsert the front wheel. Just been careful of the paintwork there, just to make sure you line it all up correctly. There is two slots on the wheel, disc brake obviously on the same side as the caliper would be. Reinsert that in. It takes a little bit of wiggling to get it in there, but once it's in there, what you can't see out of shot now is I've just put two 21mm nuts on the back just to hold that back in, and they're getting tightened up. It's a case of now just putting the caliper back on. Like I said before, that's just to protect the disc so we don't bend it when we're trying to remove or reinsert the wheel. So we get that lined up, tighten it down. The best way to line it up is to pull the brake lever in while they're just a little bit loose, and then you can nip them up completely, because someone just holding the brake lever down there. That's that lined. Right, it's time to reinsert the cable. You'll notice there's a spring on the cable there. That area there is to protect the cable as it comes out the hole, so it has to go over. There's a little screw that you've got to try and line it in and into this little clip here. Now once you've got it in the clip, try and push it up over the screw and realign the back so the springy bit is sticking out of the notch in the rear swing arm. That's it, and then return the clip. You tighten it up with a Phillips screwdriver, and that is the cable all tucked away. Now to reinstall the mudguard. In my particular case, I raised my mudguard. I must put the thread lock back in the holes. I find it easier just to drip a bit in the holes. Now I put some little titanium washers that I bought from a company called Risk. They're actually for brake calipers, and I used them on the fronts to get the angle that I wanted. Tighten the rears down, that raises the mudguard up, and then tighten the fronts down after that, and that's the mudguard all installed. Right, it's time to give it a test run. That's the caliper tightened, making sure that's nice and tight. Spin the wheel, make sure it spins freely. Okay, so now it's review time. So now I've had a chance to ride it backwards and forwards to work for last week. The weather's not been the best. I could tell you my value community has single-handedly been the best purchase I made for the scooter so far. I'm in no way sponsored by the product, but bang for buck is close to being the best mod I've done so far. The improvements in ride quality is actually way beyond what I was expected. In fact, I was wondering beforehand if I'd even notice it. Well, it turns out it didn't take long to put that thought to bed. So I'll give you some stats first. I'm a 105 kg rider, so that's 230 pounds. I ended up getting pretty close to my max pressure recommended on the shock. Eventually I upped it to close to 200 psi on the main and 120 on the negative. The unit has saved 1/4 kilogram in the scooter's weight, and time wise it's about 30 minutes to do. Now on to real world riding. On the road and pavements, the ride was way smoother than before. No creaks, knocks that I'd previously become accustomed to. In fact, all I could hear was the whir of the motors and tyres, which I'd never really noticed before. At speed, I had more confidence, although I now became more aware of the front end wobble. I'm guessing I sneaked into the zone of speed that I previously hadn't had the guts to go to. Braking, I didn't get as much nosedive, and for me it was more confident using more of the front brake than I previously done so in the past. I've been more of a tail breaker. Finally, the corner room's better. I found myself wanting to weave, and I can only guess I was leaning on the side of the tyres more than and it wouldn't hit a bump and wash out on me. Next up, I took it off road. Again, the ride was slightly smoother and the bigger hits were soaked up some before you felt them. It was a smaller scooter raised up than banged up. In the mud, the scooter felt more or less the same as it did before. However, it has had the bonus of being much easier to wash down than the original spring. So overall, I'm super impressed. In fact, I'm wondering whatever I do next is instantly going to be compared to this, and all for £45, I'm well happy.
Okay, so you remember I said I'd bring you a bonus tip? Well, the bonus tip is, if you do have the dual chamber variant, is to fill this negative pressure one up before you put your wheel back on. That way then you can screw your shock pump onto it, otherwise the wheel gets in the way.